my channel.
Welcome back to my channel.
Alex is here.
Hi.
So I have a we have a very exciting announcement.
That we have made an ebook.
We've made an ebook! So Roxy's getting excited. We talked about this a while ago. It's been something we've discussed on the channel for a long time about a bread ebook, because probably the most requested recipe that I get on my vlog channel in my recipe videos is for Alex's bread. Do you want to tell everybody a bit about when you started baking bread?
I started baking bread, like many people I suppose, during the pandemic lockdowns.
Yes.
And yeah, it turns out I'm really good at making bread. And out of all the recipes on Maddie's channel, this is by far the most popular. So it turns out, yeah,
You're the real star
I'm
here.
the more talented sort of cook in the relationship. So I thought it was only fair that I pass some of that sort of talent and knowledge onto you.
Yes, so Alex is taking over.
Yes.
This ebook, we have basically put together all of Alex's learnings and also anything that I've learned along the way of baking. So we've got lots of simple bread recipes. So we've got your classic farmhouse loaf, wholemeal loaf, is it called a batard?
Batard, yeah.
Yes.
The shape.
We've got bagels, crumpets, chocolate babka.
Got naan.
We've got naan, pitta, flatbreads. It's basically if you are somebody who's wanted to bake bread for a long time and who's been trying to figure out how to do it because it seems a bit overwhelming and complicated, this book is going to make it simple for you. We've tried it all. We've done courses. Alex has obviously got years of testing recipes and adjusting them.
Failing and then trying to make it as simple and foolproof as possible.
Exactly. Most excitingly is that this ebook is being launched with the plant-based bundle. You may have heard of this before. I've done this a few times over the years with amazing creators. It is a bundle filled with vegan cookbooks. So you can purchase Basics of Bread along with my other two ebooks, Plant Kitchen Comforts and Versatile Vegan, along with so many other creators' ebooks and courses for a discount for a very limited time. And we wanted to launch this ebook with this bundle so that you get the opportunity to buy all of the things and benefit from all of it all at once, basically. Crazily, the total of these ebooks, programs and courses is over $4,000 and it only cost $50. So it's a 99% discount. I know it sounds like there's a catch, and I share this every time I've done these bundles. Loads of you have loved the bundles and you've been so excited when I've done them. There isn't a catch. It's literally just that us as creators are coming together to share our knowledge on veganism, on plant-based living, and by collaborating, we can reduce the price. So we can make it that we're selling all of our things for a really discounted price because we're collaborating. That is the only catch, and you get all the benefits on your end. Don't miss out because it only lasts until the 14th of July, so depending on when you're watching this, go and grab it. I'll leave a link down below. Let's get baking some bread. We're going to share a few from our cookbook, Basics of Bread. So the first recipe we want to share is one that Alex makes every week. This is kind of like, I guess, like an adaptation of all the different recipes you've tried and you've just made it your own?
Yes, I adaptioned it from, yes. Well, Jen, originally, I think it was your mum that kind of taught me the basic recipe. It's kind of like the basic recipe, the basic like ratio of flour and salt and water that can be used for a lot of different breads.
Let's get started.
So we've got 250, to make the right sized loaf for us as two people, 250 grams of the strong white bread flour, and then same again, 250 of the plain white. And then, so we've got 500 there. For 500 grams, I would have 10 grams of salt, which is about 2 heaped teaspoons. And then for convenience, we have a 7-gram sachet of fast action dried yeast, which I'll put on the other side because you don't want it to interact with the salt too early because it will kill the yeast. In we go. And then all you need is the water. So for 500 grams of flour, I'll get 300 mils of water. How close are we? Ooh. Aha! Oh. That is good enough, 301. So when you put your finger in, you kind of want it to just feel like normal temperature, like the same temperature as the air. Not too cold and definitely not too hot because that will destroy the yeast. And now we will just mix them together. And then I would just take this to our stand mixer, which will kind of, with the dough hook, will knead it up for us. If you're going to knead it by hand, you don't have a stand mixer, this is how you do it. Hello, I'm in the corner now. So pop this in, and then it locks into place. And we just lower it down, turn it on, and it will kind of do its thing and gradually turn it into a dough. And I would do that on a sort of low to medium speed for about 4 to 5 minutes. You kind of tell when it's come into a nice dough and it's kneading it for you. Obviously it's kind of stuck itself to the dough blade here. I've got a little plastic dough, what do you call this, a dough blade, little scoop, which is very handy. I would definitely advise getting one of these. Take that out. Now we have our little dough baby, and you could just leave it like that. I tend to just kind of scoop it just into a little ball like that, just a bit neater in the base, and then you can kind of tell better how it's risen. And now we'll leave it with a damp, preferably tea towel, on the top for about 1 to 1.5 hours in a nice warmish place, perhaps like a windowsill. We put it on top of our boiler because our boiler is quite big. When it's about doubled in size, which should take 60 to 90 minutes. Ta-da! So now it is doubled. And what we will do, I need my little trusty scraper. I'll scoop it out. So you can lightly flour or oil the surface before you put the dough out onto it. I try to avoid that if possible, but it's fine. But this doesn't need it, so I'll just put it straight down onto it. And now we're going to knock it back. So I'm going to make it into a circular shape like that till it's quite, you know, even and flat, circle enough. And I will take one side of the circle and I'll bring it to about 75% of the way over. And then I will rotate it if you need. You know, this is where oil or flour does come in handy. You can scoop it up, and then I'll carry on doing that, and I will rotate, and then it stops being a circle quite quickly. And I'll keep doing that, rotate. Whoop. There we go. And I think that's 5 times. I'll try and do it about 10 to 15, and you'll gradually start making it into a tight ball shape. I'll keep doing that. And then rotate and pull, just until it gets quite difficult to be. I don't want to split the dough too much. So I don't want to be pulling it too much and then it's kind of ripping it like that. I try to avoid doing that, but I'm never too fussy. It's getting quite tight, it's getting quite thick. Then you know you're pretty much there. Like I said, about 10 to 15 of those. And I'll plop it, seam side down, and I'll be sort of rotating and tucking with my hands under to make it even tauter, and then it's ready. And I'll leave that to rise again for 30 minutes. Look at our little dough boy. He's got nice and big. It's all grown up. We're going to do the same thing again. So we've rolled him over again, so the seam side that was down is now on the top. Knock it back, and hear the air squidging out. And we'll do the same as before. We'll bring it over, rotate, at least this is how I do it. Again, you can feel it's tighter this time. Okay, so you can leave it like that to prove for another half an hour, put your tea towel on it, and that's fine. Or if you have a proofing basket like this, you can use that. It helps, mainly for sourdough. You put it in and it helps shape it, and it helps it to rise in the nice sort of ball-like shape that you want, because it's, you know, shaped like that. I will put some flour onto this so it doesn't get sticky. I just kind of sprinkle it on, rub it in a bit, and then when the dough's in it and it's kind of expanding, it makes a nice pattern like you would see maybe in a bakery. Makes your bread look really posh. I just sprinkle it. You can rub it on. I would sprinkle it on because again it adds to that nice pattern and helps it to not stick by doing it on both sides. I think that's good. And then gently take it and I'll be putting it in upside down, flip it 180 degrees so the seam bit is on the bottom there, well the top, you know what I mean, there. We can cover it and leave it to prove for 30 minutes before it goes in the oven. The oven is heating up at 230 degrees Celsius fan. We're going to put this in the Dutch oven to heat up with the lid on. This is about 25 centimeters circumference, and heating it up helps cook the bread when the bread is ready and stop the bread from sticking inside the pot. Preheated, so we'll take it out carefully. So I'm going to put this reusable parchment paper in to put the bread on top to help it not stick. Tip it over onto my hand and it will gently come out with a nice pattern on top. So keep it this way up. Put it gently into the middle, and now we're going to score the top. So I'm going to score the top with a cross shape with this dough blade. This is very sharp. If you don't have one of these, you can just use a regular kitchen knife, but you have to use a little bit more pressure. Carefully making the incision. Not too much pressure. And it'll come on the other side. So we'll put the lid on, put it in the oven for 30 minutes with the lid on, and then 5 minutes at the end with the lid off to brown the top. That's good. The bread is out. Look how lovely. I'm just going to leave it to cool on a wire rack for 20 minutes before we can dig in. There's the loaf. We're just going to dig into this right now.
Lovely.
Squishy. This is Maddie's favourite.
Without fail, every time Alex makes a loaf, the second it's cooled, well, I come in before it's cooled down, chop it, have a slice with butter and salt, because it's just, I highly recommend. Just look at that. This is a fun one. We're making bagels at home. These are a really good one to have in your kind of arsenal of bread recipes, because I feel like they're a recipe that we all love. We all love bagels for breakfast, for the weekend, for brunches. It's kind of a fun one also to make and share with other people because it's kind of impressive. And we'll share with you how to shape them as well, because that's kind of a key part. And the fun thing is that you boil them first before you bake them in the oven. So let's make some bagels. So throughout the book, we wanted to share different methods of baking. And one thing that's important in baking bread is yeast, and you can get lots of different types. In our last recipe, we used the fast action dried yeast, which you can throw straight in with the flour. If you buy this yeast, the dried active yeast, it needs to be activated first, and it's a good thing to learn to try different yeast methods. And for the bagels, we're going to do this. I'll show you how to activate your yeast before using it in your recipe. The main difference is that this just isn't activated yet because it's not the fast action kind. So it just comes like this. And I'm just going to use 7 grams. Just weigh this out. So the fast action yeast is just a little bit more convenient. And then to our yeast, I'm adding in a tablespoon of sugar, which is telling me is around 14 grams. It's probably like 15 really. And the way that this works is you're activating the yeast before you're using it. So we're going to use 300 ml of lukewarm water, or it's around 1 1/4 cups. Then just give this a quick stir to mix everything together and allow it to sit like 5 minutes until it gets frothy on top. And that's the yeast doing its thing and activating. For this recipe, you need 500 grams of strong white flour. Oh my gosh, I don't think there's going to be enough. Oh, there is. Hee, that's funny, look. Pretty much exact. And to the flour, you need a teaspoon of salt, which is around 5 grams. And then just gently mix this with a spoon. When your yeast is activated, it should have that frothy layer on top. So we'll just pour this into the flour. And so at this point you can use a mixer, but I'll show you how to do this by hand. So I'm just going to use the handle of a spoon to mix this all together. Now that's all mixed with the spoon, you can use a dough blade. I really recommend getting one of these. Plastic ones I think are just easier because they don't scrape up your work surfaces, but you can also get metal ones. We just got gifted this on one of the bread courses we did, so we've used it ever since. And you want to just scrape this in the bowl, whoops, until it kind of is smooth in the bowl, it's not sticking anywhere, and just like mix this in, essentially. And now we want to pour it out onto a work surface, and there are two basic methods here. One is called walking the dough, one is called folding and slapping. So walking the dough is what it says on the tin. You use your dough scraper to walk your dough along the surface, and then pick up your dough, slap it down, fold, slap it down, fold, slap it down, fold. So you want to do this 5 times and then go back to walking your dough. And when you walk the dough, you want to keep the bottom on the bottom. You're not rotating it like this or anything. You're just doing this. And you repeat this process until your dough becomes smooth. It's like therapy. Woohoo! Okay, so you know it's ready when it's all smooth like this and it's a lot more elastic and it's kind of coming away from the surface easily. If it's still sticking, it's not ready. So we'll return this to the bowl, or you can just leave it where it is and cover it with a damp tea towel and leave this to rise till doubled in size for an hour to an hour and a half. So now we've got our beautiful risen dough. I'm going to turn this out onto the surface and then we're going to shape our bagels after weighing them out. So you can make 8 to 10 bagels from this dough. I like to weigh them so they're even, but to be honest, you don't need to. You can just guess. And depends on the size of bagels you want, you can make slightly bigger or slightly larger. So I'm going to scale. So I'm just going to use flour, because we'll use flour in a minute, just very lightly flour this surface. You don't ever want to use too much flour when you're doing this, because you don't really want to disrupt the dough or change the amounts or anything. You can kind of lightly flour your hands as well. Tip this out. And then we're just going to knock the dough back by pressing it, so knock all the air out, and then roughly divide it and then weigh it. So you can weigh it to begin with, 813. So 813, should we divide it by 8? Yeah. Divided by 8, it's like 101 each. So you can do it roughly. So use your dough blade, do it in half, and then half again, etc., etc. So these are all approximately right now. I hope you're all appreciating my Eras Tour nails. So if you've ever made rolls before, then you've probably seen this. But to make a ball from any sort of dough, this works with a bigger loaf, kind of like what Alex showed earlier, is you pull into the middle, rotate, pull into the middle, rotate, and you do this until it kind of gets a little bit more tight and shapes a kind of ball. So you just keep on rotating and you do it probably around 10 to 15-ish times. And like Alex said, you don't want it to be too taut that it's tearing the dough or anything, but you want it to, when you rotate it, that you've got yourself a nice little ball. The other method is you just kind of create a little sort of, I don't know what you call this, little cage with your hand and sort of roll it into a ball. And flour can help with this, just on your hand so you don't stick my nails. And it does a similar thing. And then just repeat this with all of your bagels. Now we've got our little balls. I'm going to show you how to make them into bagels. I'm going to show you the simple way. There is a traditional way, which I've written in the ebook, where you make like a log shape. You kind of roll out a log and then you join it at the other end. But just for the purposes of this video, I'm going to show you how to do the simple way. With floured hands, you want to make your indent and then poke a hole through the middle of the bun. And this obviously then will become a bagel. Once you have your hole, you want to use your thumb and your fingers just to rotate and create a bagel shape. And you want this to be about 50% bigger than what you would expect a bagel to be. So you want to stretch this out and you can make the hole quite big, because you can see as soon as you put it down, it will already start to move back and shrink. So don't be afraid to give it a pull to make the hole bigger. And then when we've got our bagel shape, just set this onto a baking tray that we're gonna leave to sit for around half an hour. So let me show you that again. So make an indent where you can see the middle, flour your hand and punch a hole through the middle so it comes out the other side. And then you can get your thumb and your finger in there and just rotate it and stretch it out until you have a nice bagel hole. But yeah, you'll see they do shrink, so don't be afraid to give it another little stretch to get the whole size. And you can also kind of adjust the shape so that it's a bit more even. If it's been tugged in one direction, you know, if it's not looking the most even, you can even it out a little bit. I'm actually going to go back and make this one a little bit bigger because it's settled in. So here we've got our bagels. I'm going to cover them and then let them prove for another half an hour. You want to preheat your oven to 200 degrees Celsius while the bagels are proving. So maybe in the last like 15 minutes, halfway through, turn your oven on to preheat. Then get a very large saucepan, the biggest one you have, fill it up with water and bring it to a boil. Here are our bagels. They've puffed up nicely. We're going to put in a tablespoon of bicarbonate of soda. This is to alkalize the water. And like I mentioned before, this is what we do with bagels. You basically boil them before. Take your bagels, plop them in the water, and you're going to cook them on each side for a minute. I'm going to do this in batches of 4, but if you have a smaller pan, you can do it in batches of 2. Using a slotted spoon, you want to flip it over and do the other side for a minute as well. And then return these, the right side up, to your baking tray. Look how much they've puffed up. Gorge. So here's a little hack to make your bagels vegan. Use aquafaba, which is the water from chickpeas, to brush your bagels instead of egg wash, and this can help your seeds to stick. So I love a seeded bagel, so you just brush your aquafaba onto the top, like so, and then you can sprinkle your seeds on. The best are definitely sesame or poppy seeds, or even some pumpkin seeds. So I'm going to do a mixture here, so we'll do a couple of sesame, and then these two I'm going to do a mixture of white and black sesame. I'm just going to sprinkle this on top, and now these are ready. You can bake them in the oven for 25 minutes. So this is some sort of homemade vegan Philadelphia. I'm just going to shove this on. My mouth is literally watering. We've been baking all day and haven't had a bite of bread yet. I love bagels so much. They're so chewy and delicious.
Chewy. A top tip, if it's time for a top tip, would be, because there's quite a lot of bagels there, if you're going to freeze them, cut them up in half first, and then they're ready to go straight out the freezer into the toaster.
Yes.
Rather than waiting for them to defrost.
Hello. We're making pita breads.
Really yummy.
So this, I'm just holding this because because there's two of us here, but we'll go back to normal in a second. I'm waving this around.
If you put it there, it would probably
it
would pick it up just fine. Yeah.
So we're going to make pita breads because now you've learned how to make a normal loaf and bagels. This is fairly self-explanatory. With bread, a lot of the starting points are similar. So with pita, it's going to be very similar to how we started our farmhouse loaf and also how we started our bagels. The difference comes with the amounts, the ratios, and also how you shape everything and cook it. You want to make some homemade hummus with these as well. So similar to the bagels, we're going to activate our yeast first with 150 ml of lukewarm water in a bowl. So 10 grams of yeast, along with 2 teaspoons of sugar, which is about 10 grams. So 5 grams per teaspoon. Give this a stir to mix everything together. And the sugar will feed the yeast and help it to activate. And you just leave that to sit for around 5 to 10 minutes until there's a frothy layer on top. So for our pittas, I'm going to measure out 250 grams of strong white flour, along with 5 grams of salt. So now we've got our frothy top to our yeast mixture. I'm using a mixer for this one, but if you don't have a mixer, follow the method that I shared for kneading the dough before. Let's add in our yeast, sugar and water mixture, along with a tablespoon of olive oil. And then we mix like we did the bread on the slow setting to begin with. And then as it starts to come together, you can speed it up a little bit for around 5 minutes. And now we can cover this and let it rise for an hour. So our dough has doubled in size. I'm going to turn this out onto our work surface. And then we're going to divide this into 4 or 5. And again, you can weigh this out just so that they're even, but you don't have to. So it's 429. Now you've divided them, make them into a rough sort of circle and get a rolling pin. You can put a bit of flour on the rolling pin, but again, don't be using loads and loads of flour. It's not necessary. It should be fine. And then you're just going to roll these out into an oval shape that's around like 15 centimeters long, but it does depend on whether you're doing 4 or 5. If you're doing 4, it'll be a bit bigger. If you're doing 5, they'll obviously be a bit smaller. Yeah, you can pick them up and sort of shape them. And to be honest with you, I quite like that pittas have that rustic feel, so I don't feel the pressure like maybe with a bagel to make them even. I quite like them when they are, you know, misshapen, kind of similarly to flatbreads. Put a little bit of extra flour on each one. You can stretch it out with your hands a little bit. Should be just a more elastic dough than, a bit slightly more sticky than your normal bread. And with dough, if you find, this is just a tip, if you find that your dough keeps on just shrinking back again, leave it to rest. This can happen with any kind of dough, and it just needs a minute. Because if you've just divided it, shaped it, been touching it, it just needs a moment. So if you're getting frustrated and your dough keeps on not doing what it's told, give it a second. Now you've shaped your pitta, just cover these and leave them to rest for like 5 minutes. We have our hot, piping hot baking tray. Take your pitta bread and then we can bake these in the oven for like 5 to 7 minutes. I'm just going to do 3 at a time because this baking tray is not the biggest. And then they should puff up beautifully. So have a little look after 5 minutes. Voila. So they should puff up like this. Nice little Pitta pockets. Let's get these ones out and then we can do the other ones. Truly is the best Pitta you'll ever have. It's like eating a bread cloud. It's so soft and buttery and cushiony and just, oh, feels very nostalgic as well. I thought Pitta just reminds me of my childhood.
So fluffy.
So fluffy I could die. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you want to experiment more with bread recipes and learn how to be a baker, an expert at-home baker, then definitely grab our ebook Basics of Bread as a part of the plant-based bundle for a limited time only. $50, over 100 ebooks, courses, programs, and it finishes on the 14th of July, I think. So I really recommend you grab it now at this reduced cost because you're getting so much more bang for your buck, especially if you're interested in vegan cooking in general. And I'll see you in my next video. Well, we'll see you. No, you won't be here.
I won't.
But
I'll disappear again.
Everyone can bask in Alex's presence for this video because you're always asking for it.
Finally, a good recipe on Madeleine and Olivia's channel.
Give this video a thumbs up and subscribe, and we'll see you actually over the next few days. I've got some really great recipe videos coming, so stay tuned.